Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by TheLines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander. That's Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we're rolling along here with a 4-game slate for you on Thursday here in the NBA, coming off of a massive 14-gamer on Wednesday, where we went a total of 5-4 on the night, up plus 0.4 units on that one. 2-2 in best bets, 3-2 in play of props. As we move forward here on the season, Nate, we're 34-31. We are up 3.25 units, so we're feeling good after about a week and a half or so. Still learning, obviously. Also, just continue to want to tell you to continue to follow along. In this video, we're going to have best bets, also have our play of props up for you each and every weekday. So do subscribe to this page, like the video if you would as well. Also head to thelines.com if you're looking for some great content right now on the site. Also have the odds finder tool up there. You can use that to make sure you're getting the best odds available to you from all of these books that are giving us bets this NBA season. Nate, let's roll right into your first pick here for November the 2nd.
Well, let's take a quick pause first and recognize that the Celtics have been annihilating worlds, the Wizards and Pacers most recently, and that they're plus 155 to have the top overall record in the NBA, which, minus 150 to get the the Eastern Conference number one seed. And then I look at that flip plus 150. I don't think there's a Western Conference team that can run the gauntlet as well, given the discrepancy in conferences. I think you bet the Celtics right now and hope that none of their amazing starting five gets hurt. Because if they don't, this is just an absolute wagon. Like, there's nobody stopping this team right now. And that is 4 games in, getting completely over my skis. But really, it's more about fading the rest of this top East right now because the Bucks look like trash. And the Sixers are pretty good.
They do. And
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, you're saying plus 150 is to win the title, and
no,
you
not
take
to win the title.
Minus 150 to come out of the
most
East right
regular season wins to be the number one overall seed.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the Sixers do look pretty good, and so that's our segue to tonight because we're looking at a huge rest advantage for the Sixers as they host the Raptors. My angle is initially a same game parlay. Embiid 25 points, Maxey 25 points, and then Scotty Barnes to keep doing what he's been doing, 15 points, 8 boards for the Raptors, gets you plus 300 at FanDuel. The reasoning is pretty clear with the Sixers that they're just a 2-man offense right now with the trade pieces still in transit, that they're on huge extra rest. They last played on Sunday. Maxey is up to a 26% usage rate, 150 offensive rating. Another futures look right now is to get him for most improved player of the year. Preseason thought maybe Mikal Bridges would stay that course, but he's kind of plateaued, it seems. Maxey is on the rise. He's been a matchup problem for these Raptors going back to last season. Dropped 2 big games in October. One without Embiid, one with both Embiid and Harden. Now without Harden. Obviously, much bigger usage, much more reliable role. And he just dropped, 34 when these teams played last week. Embiid also dropped 34. Don't really need to get anyone to back the MVP, but he's actually leading the NBA in usage this year so far, 37.5%. And, extra rest is when he posted his highest usage rate last season, 38.5%, when he got at least 2 days off going into this one. Scotty Barnes, your early candidate for fantasy basketball MVP based on the value, like 4th-round pick who's just filling it up, playing as many minutes as he can handle under new coach Darko. While Pascal Siakam has kind of seen a lowered usage, lower playmaking, it's really been Scotty with the rebounds, with the assists, in a very reliable role in terms of peripheral stats. He's averaging 21 points, 10 rebounds, 5.5 assists. And his usage rate is up. It's a little concerning, I guess, with the Raps on a back-to-back here, but Barnes, his numbers did kind of diminish last year on those back-to-backs, but different situation, like I said, with the Siakam, seeing a 5% lower usage rate, and he has come to play against Philly. His last 26.5 points, 8.5 rebounds, shooting nearly 70% from the floor. There's something that Coach Darko has done to unlock his offense a little bit. 15 points is pretty conservative for a guy who you'd think could get 20 here as long as this game remains competitive. And the Sixers, the second worst rebounding team in the league last year. They're 22nd so far this year, also 27th in free throws allowed. So I think there should be some points to be had for Barnes as he tries to keep Toronto in it.
No problems with any of it. I would say, if anything, a little bit conservative with Maxey, but I suppose the Raptors are going to be better at guarding the perimeter than some of the teams that he's played. En route to Eastern Conference Player of the Week last week for the first one of the season, he is definitely going to be the beneficiary of that James Harden departure. And that's why his most improved player odds got nuked entirely, because they went from about plus 1,400 right before the James Harden trade down to 2-1 right after it. I'm sure they're still dropping a little bit. Everybody I spoke to or hit me up on text was like, I got to keep hitting this Maxey most improved player. And by the time it got like down to 5-1 or below, I was like, I'm kind of out on that. But your reasoning is solid everywhere as well. I would also say the interesting thing about the Scotty Barnes and, let's say, OG Anunoby almost as like his running mate in this offense right now is that they're number one in the league in fast break points. And they're still playing at a really slow pace, one of the slowest, possibly the slowest in the entire league right now. Yet they're still getting out on the fast break because Scotty Barnes is a one-man fast break. He's your typical get it and go size player, style player, etc. So that was always going to be, I think, the case this season for them, was like it's Scotty's time kind of thing, and like we really want him to take over and justify his fourth round pick. So I think the usage will continue to be there for him. I don't think there's some weird fluky thing. I'm sure he got better since last season, but I also think they're just putting him in a position where it's like, all right, it's your time to shine. And this is his, third year he's taking advantage of that. So I'm with all that. I'm going to stick in this game for my first bet as well and talk about the over in it. I think we've got an opportunity to get a good over on 214.5, which, like, they either go over by a solid 10 points in this, or they go under by a solid 10 points in this matchup. So I'm going to keep the over as my bet in this one, though. Philly, they just pick up the pace without Harden. I think this game would have gone over in their last matchup when they played last week if Toronto hadn't shot like complete duty in that game. And in this game at Philly, I think they actually do shoot. They shoot just fine on the road. Not really much of a sample size this season yet, but back to the pace. 100 pace without Harden last season for the Philadelphia 76. This year they have 100 pace. Last year when they had James Harden, they ran at a 95 pace. So do with that what you will. I mean, in the games they didn't have Harden last season, they ran at a 98 pace. So I think that's going to be more of their floor, is the 98 and up to 100. Everybody's playing fast at the beginning of the season, as we know, so it's not super indicative. But the offense is still super efficient for Philly, and that's a huge part of what I'm banking on, is their ability to continue to score against this team that will always struggle against defending senders, and that's why Embiid will continue to eat, as you mentioned, some of his numbers, and I don't know if you mentioned exactly, but the last 8 games that he's played against them, we're talking about 29 points per game and 9 boards and 4 assists in his last 8 averages, his last 8 games. Those are his averages. So throw who you want out there. Precious Achiuwa is not even going to play in this game, by the way. If that matters, like, at least it is one more big body that they don't have for JoJo. So I think that they're just going to have to keep up with the pace of them. And the way they know that the way that they're going to be able to score the Raptors is by getting out in transition and getting to the rim early in possessions. And that's going to be super helpful to keep the pace up, even if the 76ers, want to go into Joel and get him down there to like do his thing. There's still going to be plenty of opportunity for Maxey, who averages 30 points a game so far, and a lot of those are on fast break, and a good reason that Philly's got much more fast break points than they did last year. 5 more fast break points per game right now than they had last year. They also averaged that many more when they did not have James Harden last year. So you get what I'm saying. This year is already a solid indication of an extension of last year without James Harden, what this team looks like, the pace that they play at. No more PJ Tucker either, I would add. Not that he's like super terrible for pace, but he's not like helping it either, right? He's not getting up the floor. If anything, it's just a good rebounder. But I think that the fact that they can't stop JoJo, and I'll talk about some guys from this game as well for Toronto that I like to be able to get some stats. I think this game goes over the 214.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Toronto has gas in the tank after beating the Bucks last night. I mean, these teams did meet with Toronto on a back-to-back last week, and it did go over this total. It might not have gone over the implied total for that game, but 221 was the total. So I think you're spot on in just saying, like, look, James Harden at this point in his career is going to lead to more unders than overs. Like, he's going to take the air out of the ball, and just wind down the shot clock and then, maybe take a lot of bad step back threes and just ruin the entire space and flow and enjoyment of watching the damn game. Get this man off our coast and over to the West Coast. That was
no, we don't want
unexpected anger about James Harden. But this is a similar situation, I think, for my second pick. Because I'm thinking maybe you just want the Sixers over based on that, because the Raptors are on back-to-back because the Sixers are so well rested. And I'm taking the Jazz over 111.5, even though they're the ones on a back-to-back here against Orlando. But, I mean, it's similar in the sense that Orlando's an offense I'm not really willing to trust, but the Jazz at home, after an impressive win, I do trust. They just dropped 79 in the first half against Memphis last night. They are a very good half-court offense right now. Average and at home, like, the discrepancy is huge in this small sample size early, scoring 122 at home with a 101.5 pace versus a 97 pace in their two roadies so far this year. Orlando on the fourth game of a West Coast trip, got to be a little tired. And this was a situation where they did actually get into some higher scoring games last year. They went 20-10 to the over against the West last year. They gave up 118 to the Clippers, not necessarily the highest scoring team at all. I mean, they've been building on defense. And then the Lakers, when they were on a back-to-back, only got 106 against the Magic. I think a lot of that is just they went 8 for 27 from 3. They're also a very old team on a back-to-back. The Jazz are a very young team, and they, didn't have to play very much last night because the Memphis Grizzlies cannot buy a win. They were out of it early, and no starter played over 28 minutes. So you got Lauri Markkanen well-rested. He last year averaged 30 points per game with 27 free throws in 2 meetings with the Magic. The team shot 61 free throws against the Magic. They averaged 121.5 points per game, despite, not great three-point shooting. There's room for improvement there. In their last 6 meetings against this Magic team, which has always been kind of low scoring and bruised, they're averaging about 120. And their only loss being in Orlando. So Utah, 3rd in assists, 6th in threes this year. And their D is just not that great either. The game state should be good because they're giving up the 6th most free throws. They're dead last in opponents' 2-point shooting. Love Paolo Banchero to kind of snap out of his little funk here. Get Orlando some points. I don't hate the over for the entire game, which is 221, but I'm just going to bank on the home team holding up their end of the bargain by getting over that 111 mark.
I think they're right. That's right. Everything you're saying about the Jazz here. The Magic are playing muck it up ball, but yeah, we saw the Clippers able to score on them. Not that this Jazz offense is the Clippers, but you put the Jazz at home, and I would say that the offense is definitely not as efficient as the capabilities of the Clippers, but they were going to try to put up more points than the Clippers in the first place. So that's going to be a big reasoning for why you like them over 111.5. This went over last year. I believe you mentioned that as well when they faced off in Utah, which is where you want to take the Jazz when you're taking an over on their points for sure. So I'm going to take Jakob Poeltl over 18.5 points, rebounds, and assists in his matchup against the 76ers and JoJo Embiid. 2 main points for me, dude. He's got to play against JoJo, so he's got to play. And he's gone over in 5 of his last 6 versus Embiid in a couple matchups where he was on the Spurs, a couple matchups where he's on the Raptors. And that includes when he was on the Raptors, then went to the Spurs, then went back to the Raptors. So plenty of experience playing in a Raptors uniform in Toronto or away, whatever. But his 3 games last season that he played against him, he played 2 of them as a Spur and 1 of them as a Raptor. 14.5 points, 11 boards. That already gets you over 19 PRA. He also had 3.5 assists, and that's all in 28 minutes. So actually really efficient for him with a really nice PER at his 28-minute per game clip there. But those 28 minutes are just when Joel's in there, and then probably roughly 5 or so that he plays when that he sits when Joel's not on the floor, and sometimes when Joel is. But main point is his minutes just coincide with Embiid's, and he's done a pretty good job getting the rebounds. That's the big thing that I just keep coming back to is the double-digit boards for him should really help us get over 19 with the assists and the points combined in this one. I don't love his lack of free throws. He only averages 2 per game. Doesn't doesn't really go at Embiid. It's a lot of baby hooks, as we know, and putbacks when he's able to get to some offensive rebounds. But I do love the fact that he shoots 71% and gets 11 rebounds per game. That's really what I'm banking on. And the fact that he gets about 3 assists per game in this type of matchup with all these cutting guards and guys like Pascal Siakam filling the lane against him and actually having plus matchups usually on their end of the floor when they're on offense. Like Pirtle, not really a plus matchup on offense, but get him the ball in the paint, and he's a good passer, and especially on this, like I said, Raptors team with so many great cutting guards and wings. So the assists really help out as well. I think that's really what helps me feel comfortable about the 19. I don't think they're giving him enough juice for that. I'm putting a full 1.2 units on this one because I really like it. I think we're getting some value because he only got 15 points, rebounds, and assists versus Philly at home last week. And he actually averages a little bit more on the road, rather 1 more point on the road than at home for what you want to do with that. So the 19 for Pirtle.
Yeah, I'm with it. I mean, just to play a little sports psychologist here, Joel Embiid, while he's putting up his numbers, looks a little depressed. I think coming into the season with this for like the second time in 3 years where he has a running mate just loaf his way out of town. Maybe things change now that Harden's gone, but I don't think he's like giving the same effort defensively. I don't think he's like necessarily that locked in. I mean, they moved Harden for a total not win now move. They just add a bunch of veterans. Like, I don't know what the discussion is. Like the Sixers, they're like, yeah, we're gonna get the 3 seed and we're gonna like maybe make it to the semifinals in the conference. Like, it's just not necessarily like I'm going to be locked in from day one for Embiid. He got his MVP last year. All that is to say, like, I don't think he's like going out to dominate Jakob Poeltl in November. I think he'll get his numbers on offense, but he'll also allow the opposing center to do his thing.
Fair point. Yeah, I think I'm not going to jump in on the pop psychologist with JoJo, although I like it. It's tough to say for sure. Like the comments that he made, obviously in the offseason about like wanting to make sure that like he has people alongside him that can help him get to the championship, I think was the start of almost right like the first domino in what the Dame Lillard example, right? That's our use case of like you start with this one little comment and the dude that you thought wasn't really ever going to leave town is now like, might want to leave town. So not sure if that comes into play either. As a Knicks fan, I hope it does. So if you hear any kind of eagerness in my voice, that's what that is. But that's all the time we have for you in this one. Continue to follow along. Also have our player props up for you. Doing slightly better now on player props. Actually started really hot on the best bets and now are back to sort of even money on the best bets, but up 3 units on the player props. So make sure to check that out as well. And until we talk to you next, happy betting.